Welcome. I'm John Manoochehri. I'm the founder of the Future Perfect project. I'm just going to very quickly explain what it is, the theme of this evening, and the format of this evening, and then we're going to jump straight in, because we have a spectacular panel and lots of things to talk about. The Future Perfect project is very simple. It basically works on this idea, and see if you can follow me here. If we thought sustainability as a conversation or as a transition in society was reducing harm, we might have discovered that that's not a very attractive or a very functional proposition. If we thought sustainability was discovering how talented we were as a species, how much opportunity we have left, that might be a more attractive and more functional proposition. And so what Future Perfect wants to do is to take the sustainability conversation and make it into something that brings in the people that want to create great stuff. And our job is to find out, does it fit? Is there a crossover between an adventure in living well, all the cool things that all the different branches of modern society are exploring, technology, food, architecture? Is there a crossover between that stuff, the cool stuff, which we all want and we all buy, and all this sustainability stuff? That's our job. So this evening, the conversation entitled Nordic Food Localism is taking some of the most interesting and exciting people in food and architecture in cities and doing that with them, exploring how their contributions to great food, great architecture, great city design overlaps or doesn't overlap with the broader sustainability conversation. And the format that we run in the Future Perfect project, which Gabriella will talk about a bit later this evening, is avoiding PowerPoint slides and avoiding big lectures. So I need to shut up very soon, as you can tell. We want everyone to join the conversation, including you. And so the format is essentially inputs from the speakers, which then we'll gather together in a conversation, which you're at any point welcome to join. And then we're going to bring in some other voices, the respondents, who will introduce themselves a bit later, to comment and to help the conversation move forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit and join the panel right now and kick off straight away, if you don't mind. What we're going to do is allow the speakers to present themselves. And the question I'd like to put to them is, who are you? What is your work? And how do you respond to two things? The concept of Nordic food localism and the concept of sustainability. And we'll just very short bites, and then we'll bring it all back.
And I should start.
And you should start.
Thank you for inviting me, first of all. My name is Mathias Dahlgren, restaurateur and chef. Restaurateur for some 20 years and chef for a little bit more than 25. I run my two restaurants here in Stockholm at the Grand Hotel, the food bar and the dining room. I would say in the last 10 years worked very much into trying to find the best local foods in this area. And especially since I opened these two restaurants, we had a very important meeting in the restaurant before we opened. Tried to gather some 15 producers and have a very close dialogue with them, and try to in the dialogue try to create a new dialogue that we create a better quality together, because I think that's maybe the most important thing with the dialogue, that we together can create something better, new things, and also to make better quality on things that already is existing. About the new Nordic thing, I'm a little bit double. I think it has been a very important and a good thing out of a communication perspective, and I have been very much part of it from the beginning, and I think it has been good to open up the interest for food in our part of the world. At the same, I see I don't really look at it that I don't really look on Nordic food as something close that should be, we only should look back and on the history. I think it's very important to be open to the new influences and also the new people that are living in our country. I think that is maybe the key question, how to how to that integration question is really, really interesting. How to create a new sort of platform that we can work on.
You mean integrating the traditions in food farming and with
both out of how to farm and to also how to cultivate and how to and the cultures behind and the new things, how we there is so much interesting in the new cultures that come to our country, and I think we have a little bit missed that. It's a very important point, not only out of a food perspective. It's a really it's a key question for me. Yeah.
Thank you, Carolyn.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me to be in Stockholm, and as the only sort of non-Swede, at least on the panel. I know John's sort of administering events. It's very nice for me. I mean, I think what I hope I'm able to do today is bring a kind of, international or at least non-Swedish perspective on the questions. And my name's Carolyn Steele. I'm an architect, and I guess the shorthand way of explaining why I'm here is that I wrote a book that came out 5 years ago now. It's called Hungry City: How Food Shapes Our Lives. And I really came to food as a sort of desperate attempt as an architect to sort of really bring real life, human life, sort of what I was really interested in exploring as an architect, i.e., how we really live, into the architectural debate, which it always seems to me is in danger of being slightly too seeking of perfection or too static and so on. So food was my way, my medium really, of introducing the complexity and the chaos, and I would say paradox is something I'm very interested in, into the architectural debate. And as a result of writing that book, and it came out in 2008, which happened to be the year of the quote-unquote global food crisis, and the quote-unquote global banking crisis, of course, we're in an ongoing food and banking and, life crisis, as we know. I'm still in work, and I haven't gone back to the day job, which is designing and building buildings, but that's absolutely fine by me. I bring, I would say, a kind of architectural imagination, a sort of very lateral kind of approach to the question of food. What I'm finding I can do is I can show a sort of non-food side of what food represents to people working directly in food, and vice versa. I can introduce the idea of food to people who haven't yet seen how it could impinge on their lives. So I'm a kind of bridge, or a sort of, a lateral connector, I suppose. In terms of Nordic food, for me it's extremely interesting. Again, I hope I can bring an outside perspective. What we see is that, there is a very actually intact, in many ways, food culture in Sweden and in other Nordic countries that we've completely lost in the UK. And there is an opportunity of actually, and indeed you already do, just in the restaurant upstairs, on the menu were herring and salmon and actually rye bread and lots of things locally produced. It's a very healthy way of living, and I think, something I hope we're going to tease out more in the conversation, if I stop talking soon, is the relationship between the beautiful simplicity of food on the one hand and its complexity on the other. I would say my position is food is the most powerful metaphor for life that we have. So in terms of sustainability, how we should live, obviously solving the food question, how we should feed ourselves, sits at the basis of every other question we have to ask, in terms of being the most necessary. And for that reason, it's also the most symbolic. So it has a beautiful verticality to it, both as a metaphor and as a physical reality.
We've got the word metaphor into the conversation. Paul.
Hello. I'm also very happy to be here today, and sustainability cooking is a big part of my life today. So I was so happy to be here and to be able to be part of this really nice evening. I also work part-wise here as a creative director in the house. But the main thing I do today is sort of an idea in Gothenburg. We started out together with a couple of other people. One of them is here together with me today, Per. And we actually try to do a really good business at the same time make it better for the environment. And it's not only about food, it has everything to do with what sort of energy we use, what sort of transportation we use, what sort of material we use to build a restaurant, and to have a really good dialogue with the owners of the building, an environmental company in Gothenburg, to be able to work really well with bags or cups and stuff like that, and also to be able to develop stuff, to be ahead and developing new stuff, to be able to be more up against the future. That's the main thing I do today. I'm really happy to be here.
Great.
Well, I have to be happy too. As a Swede. My name is Jan, and I guess I've been working during many years with 3 different things. It's art, which I still do, and actually today I'm very happy because I've just realized that we finished a book that was printed today about Marcel Duchamp and Ulf Linde, which will be presented at the Armory Show in a couple of weeks, that Daniel Birnbaum and I did. But the 2 things that are interesting for this case is that I've been working with city planning and sort of urban development, and I guess food in a way too, but really urban development during maybe 15, almost 20 years. And the last 2 years I've been working in 2 different ways. One thing is that I had a commission to develop a process to see if there would be any kind of possibility for development in a place called Upplands Väsby, that the people who live there or run the city, they want to call it Väsby. And there's an image over there of a little ermite's hut that I put there as the starting point for the development of Väsby. The little house is designed by Mats Teselius, who's a very old friend of mine. And that's sort of the point, of course, is to totally turn around the idea of where to start the process of a future city. So we actually bought back the land from a very big company to the community, and we sold it to a whole bunch of smaller companies. And that actually created a very different situation from a point of view of no development, and really nobody wanted to invest in this remote place. And now there's a huge amount of companies investing a lot, and there will be 1,200 apartments being built. And through that, that's a way to start by how cities actually started to grow. And there's a little sort of urban farm around the house, and there's actually things going to be grown there. And from that point, we started to sort of be interested in food. So we started something called Atelier Food, which is based on in the Art Academy here in Stockholm, which is the most fun project I ever did, which is to see if we can use food as a tool to create social change. At the same time, we got a commission from the government to see if we could create a manual for social change and how to get public, private, and creative forces to actually collaborate in a different way. Because I think that what we should discuss here today is really structural changes. What we do at Atelier Food, which is run by a company called Atelier Slice, is that we have a chef, Stefan Eriksson. We have me, a curator. We have a business developer called Lars-Peter Hedberg. We have a food critic called Per Styregård. We have Annette Eriksson, who's very good in everything. And we have a very young communication guy. So it's like a team where everybody's as strong as the other one, to see if we can actually from that create change. And I think that food, in that sense, is usually described as recipes and plates, where I think food is actually a kind of idea of how we can develop food, and through food we can develop ourselves, and through ourselves we can develop society. Maybe.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ola Kjellander, and I'm the founding partner of Kjellander and Sjöberg. Is this working? Hold it closer. Part of Kjellander Sjöberg. I'm not here as the representative of Kjellander Sjöberg. I'm here because I'm one of the architects behind that project, which is a teamwork with the CF Möller, by CF Möller architects, Ola Jonsson, and our company, and Wallin, which is a nice builder, and Urbio, which is a nice landscape architect. And what we're doing is that we are working in big-scale urban projects where we, together with other architects and builders and planners, try to create new parts of Stockholm. The problem with those has been historically that they do not contain enough of intensity and activity, and there's been a lot of matureness with technical sustainability, but not so much with social sustainability. And the time has come for that to happen. And I'm here also as an ambassador for the Årstafältet development, and that is made possible through a series of many lucky coincidences. Basically, it's a nice plan. The whole plan is nice from the beginning. It's more open and transparent and vertical and individualized. So we have a new platform, and also people are more interested in those aspects of planning. So we are ready to do it. And basically, I would like everybody here tonight to get more involved in this project, which is the future of a part of Stockholm, in order to put more competence into the project and make it more interesting. So what we are going to do now in our project is to develop the public in our block. And the programming of that is what we want to dig deep down into at the moment.
Explain what programming is, for not everyone here knows the...
Well, the content of it.
Yeah.
Basically, earlier on, you were happy if you could involve a corner shop or something like that, but that's not good enough. We want to take all of it, including the fifth facade, which is the roof. We want to take the landscape, we want to take everything and try to make it open to the city.
Before we kick off the exchange component, I just want to ask you a couple of things which hopefully will frame your perspective a little bit more. Share with the audience what motivates you to do what you do in one sentence, just one sentence. And then in one word, if you can, share your response to sustainability, like a kind of psychological test. So what motivates you in one sentence, and in one word, what is your response to the thing of sustainability?
Thank you.
And then in one letter.
Sentence. Motivation is creating time for interaction, basically. And you want a word.
Yeah.
That would be family.
That's a great word. Jan.
My God, John. No, I would say what motivates me is to actually create something that creates enough content to be energized.
One word on sustainability. You can trash it if you like. You can. Family is so generous.
A very overused,
Okay, there we go.
deep down problematic word.
Paul.
I would say the things that motivate me is to wake up in the morning and to make a difference. And I do it for my kids.
That's
So kids, yeah.
It's kids, okay.
Yeah.
Carolyn?
didn't realise this wave was actually bouncing off the wall and coming back. What motivates me? It sounds like a Miss World contest. You know,
if it's a Miss World contest, you're going to win.
It really is, you know, to make a better world. I mean, I'm sorry, it just is. And the word is love.
Love. Mathias.
What motivates me most is that I'm still learning a lot every day. I think it's really interesting. Better food.
Sustainability, better food.
Yeah.
Okay. Jan, were you going to comment on what Ulla was saying? You had a point there, I think.
Yeah. I have lots of comments. No, but I think in terms of programming, I think that's very important. What we did in Väsby, for instance, was that we created this thing that I call Torget, which is they tore down the old high school, and that's like 9,000 square meter of just open ground. Terrible, but that was a sort of a possibility to use an urban context to do something. So what we did was I brought Mathias out, for instance, came with some fantastic soup, incredible, and for the Vespians, that was quite a thing. That suddenly
what was the thing? Explain what was the thing for them. Soup or Mathias, or what was the thing?
No, the thing was that there was this. I think it's always important to see that somebody like Mathias is famous all over Sweden, and suddenly this guy is out there in a suburb where he is not. I mean, he's supposed to be by the Royal Castle, by Grand Hotel, but he was there and he had fun being there, I think.
So you're saying that
and at the same time we had a conversation on the future of the city. So there was like, and by doing this you have to be very persistent. And this is the tough part, because it's a bit of an investment to do it, and you have to just keep on talking and sort of develop an audience, because nobody there. Of course, it's not so sexy to talk about the development of a city. It's not even so sexy to talk about food. But if you bring Mathias Dahlgren, it's suddenly sexy.
So explain what you mean by Torget. What is that, for people that don't speak Swedish, what is the relevance or the resonance of that word? And what happens when you bring new content or program into that space?
The Torget is the square, the usual square. Like in Greece, you went to the square to have the democratic.
So Torget is the town square, basically.
The town square, absolutely. Yeah. So we created, like, instead of putting up fences around, I decided, okay, let's open up the space and let's turn it into a discussion point for the future of the city. And then to me, it was really important to bring in, because there's one thing that connects us all, and that's food. And the thing is that we threw out food in the most basic sense out of the city. Yeah. That's the whole thing of the modern era.
Ulla, explain what you're doing in a little bit more detail, and you can point a little bit to the details on the drawings, perhaps, renderings. Is it the same as what Jan's doing? Is it different? What are you bringing into the city with the project?
Well, you talk about the square, and obviously in this city plan there is several squares, but what we are trying to create is also to create a discussion what the actual block could be in the city. It is more open. You have physical openings. You can actually see the garden. The garden is elevated in order to create a nice climate, microclimate. And that means that you can have different soil depth, which means that you can grow different kind of species in different zones in the garden. So the garden is transparent from the outside, and all of the spaces basically in the street level is public. It can be used public. So basically we're trying to create a block which is have got same qualities as a square, a meeting point, and then obviously what we get straight after that, we get a discussion about borders, because we have this very well developed discussion about borders in this country, basically. They need to be very well defined. I basically say that our block is a square and it's open for discussion now.
Mathias, what's your take on what these guys are up to? Is this interesting, strange? Is it a fad? Is it something you want to be involved with? I mean, you were involved with Jan's project. Why did you do that, and what do you think it's adding up to?
No, but of course, it's interesting to create meeting spots for people that naturally can meet. I think that's a very important thing. But I think it will happen also by itself a little bit. But you have to like create this space, and people will. There is a people. I think that's maybe one of the most important things for me is that don't give the example so it's all is set. People want to be part of creating it. I think it's very important.
Carolyn, would you say that it's going to happen by itself, or do we need architects and spatial entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs to solve it? What is the way to make more of this happen, the exchange here?
I mean, my image, by the way, is that one over in the far corner there, which is one of. Sorry, it's not mine or mine. No, it's just that John asked us to give images, and I couldn't think what. And it's basically a map of London in the 18th century, tracing in this particular case where the fish markets were. And of course, the fish markets are coming up from the river. They're trying to make their way into the middle of the city. And the fascinating thing is, if you sort of trace the evolution of cities, it's all through food. It's all about food. The food physically shapes the city. And also, the interesting thing is that, you know, the public space. I mean, when Ola and Jan were talking, by the way, I must apologise. I realise that whenever John says, for those that don't speak Swedish in the room, he's basically talking about me. So sorry about that. And sorry that this whole thing is happening in English. In fact, I feel really guilty now. But anyway, thank you for all that. What I thought of when they were speaking, I wrote down 2 words. I wrote agora down, because agora, for me, is the most interesting manifestation of what a public space can be. It's kind of multi-layered public space, the Athenian agora, in other words. It was not only the everyday space, the food market, but it was also a court of law.
Agora is the same as Tory, right? It just through the Swedes. Just
it is, but it isn't.
I'm just wondering if you agree it's the same concept. Is it the same concept? The agora, the open kind of market space in the town, is the same as Tory. Okay.
Well, and the other thing I wrote down is, what is public space for?
Yeah.
But I could also equally say, what is society for? What are cities for? Why do we bother?
Yeah.
You know, and I just want to very, very briefly outline another idea that's sort of swimming around in my head at the moment. I said I'm very interested in paradox. It's the urban paradox. The urban paradox is basically that we evolved cities around, you know, a sort of a new brilliant food source we discovered, which was grain. This was evolved through farming. And basically you have to collaborate in order to farm. You can't do it on your own. And it's the only source of food that we've ever discovered which is capable of supporting large, static, non-food producing populations, in other words, urban populations. So this is an amazing evolution that's gone on for the last 10,000 years or not. The point is that we are more of the sum of our parts when we are together. You know, in other words, in order to become fully human, we need one another. But the more we gather together in order to be, more than the sum of our parts, the further away we get from our sources of sustenance. And this is a paradox because, you know, this ideal that sort of began in the 18th century of going back to nature and rediscovering, the noble savage and so on, of course, means going back to the wilderness and therefore abandoning society. And if you look at any utopian attempts to come up with, a notion of ideal society, it's always facing this kind of push-me-pull-you paradox. So the agora fascinates me because, I think, the Athenian model, for instance, is a very early urban model. It's one in which the relationship between the city and the countryside was recognized. Athens was a polis, so citizens in the country had as much, right and voting rights as those in the city did. And the agora was this sort of multi-layered space which was not only the food market, but it was also the place of politics. People actually went into that space to vote. Yeah. Now, if this is what public space can be at its ultimate, and I could go on about this at some length but won't, my question is, as Jan sort of rightly says, when we've taken food out of the city, which we did through industrialisation around about 200 years ago, what is public space for? Because people used to come into public spaces in order to buy food, and through food to negotiate, to meet one another, to find out what was going on. Food was the conduit. If you remove food, I mean, this has happened in London in the last 20 years. You know, people have sort of desperately been looking for what to do in public spaces, and lo and behold, what they do is they stick Starbucks in it, because actually this kind of, you know, this debased, lowered, non-identity related, totally non-indigenous, and this is interesting in the localism debate as well, form of food is the only way anyone could think of is bringing people back into, say, Trafalgar Square in London or the South Bank. Yeah. You know, so it's just very, I'm just layering lots of...
Let me, because the whole debate I think is going to go on these tracks, which is how we pull together society and space and food production and food culture. But let's kind of do the opposite for a moment, and because it sounds wonderful how you all describe it, and it sounds almost as if we should have never deviated from this way of blending space and society and food production and food culture. So where did it go wrong? Why do we have horse meat in our food? Why do we have Starbucks? Why do we have... where did it go wrong? Because what you sound as if we could never have got it wrong. Mathias, why is it taking us so long to sort this shit out? Why are we so... where did it go wrong with food?
I think it has to do with that we don't value. Everybody speak about food as something very interesting today, and the interest in food is huge, but it's I think the status of food is actually quite low. And if we look on the income and how much we spend of our income on food compared to how much of our income we spend maybe 50 or 100 years ago, it actually shows that the status of food has not increased. It's the opposite. And why it's I don't know if that's why horse meat is in lasagna, but food is actually too cheap.
Yeah. Okay, but let me ask you this follow-up, which is why do people care less? Is it because we've forgotten the importance of food, or?
But I think I'm not sure that people care less, because I think that the general interest in food is very high today. Yeah. And I think out of this high general interest, there is a very good. It's a good soil to plant something really good in it. So I think it will be better in the future. And if you also speak about the things that were so good back in the days, I think most of the things is better today than it was a long time ago.
Where did it go wrong?
And it will be better in the future.
Why is your project important in the bigger scheme of things?
Well, I think, I got this commission last year from something called Tillväxtverket, the growth, blah, 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 to write this manual for how things could be done in a different way. And I realized, based on working with sort of urban development for many years, that it's, and now working with food and other things, and it's like we really have the same kind of problem in Sweden. It doesn't really matter which sector you look at, because we had this fantastic Swedish model, which was like the best in the world, but it was based on a very strong industrialized top-down democracy model, where you had this top guy in the government or the city who actually could decide exactly what to build, how to run, how to make the service, how to make the... He had all the venture capital. He had everything, because it was usually he as well. And now we have exactly the same structure. Whether you look at food, which is like we have very big kitchens, we have very long transport systems, and we have everything. We still build the same kind of suburbs as we used to build in the 30s, 40s, 50s, like very big solitary suburbs with huge production platforms. But now we have it through a sort of privatized system, so which is making like a replica of the old public system, which is something that not many people have realized that we actually do here. And what's happening now, and when it comes to food, or when it comes to, let's say, death, because we used to have churchyards where we would bury people in the cities, and we used to have like farming in the cities. We used to have kitchens in the cities, and we used to have like small scale things. And what we need now is to sort of That's not when we had Fergus Henderson from London, a fantastic chef who's been working with Mathias, and I mean what he's done is really to redevelop and how do you say to find something that was old knowledge which has been gone. He sort of reintroduced, And I think that's what's happening now in area after area, that we're sort of actually just reinventing lost knowledge.
Let me put the question to you in a slightly different way, Ola. Why is it that in architecture, when people talk about landscaping, what they basically mean is green things? Why is there no sensitivity to content and meaning and productivity in the landscaping dimension of architecture and urbanism? Where did it go wrong in architecture and urban design?
I think the problem is that who is the landscape for, basically? If we have a block of flats and you got shops here and there, and that's all fine, but I don't think the landscape is for the people who actually live there. It's more for the city. Yeah. I mean, we should really develop the whole urban tissue on ground level to make it more public. And also, I would like to just add on to this about investing in food. I think the basic problem is that we don't spend enough time together. So we don't want to spend money on it either. So if I spend a long time cooking something, I want the best material to cook with, and then I want to spend money on it. So so I want basically. Somebody said, take away the kitchens. We don't need the kitchen. I would say, take away the living room. We need the kitchens. That's where we live. That's where we talk, interact, learn from each other. That's where we should be.
Take away the living room. So any potential clients of Kjellander and Sjöberg, no living rooms in there. Yeah. Mathias, you wanted to comment.
I wanted to comment.
Yeah.
Hello. Yes. I wanted to comment on what Jan said. It's like how Sweden was in the 30s and 40s and 50s. But there was something actually quite interesting. I think in every society who had more than 1,000 people, there was something called Folkets hus. Yeah, and Folkets hus is like Nya Torget. it's I don't know how to translate it, but it's like the house of people. It was like a living room that was used as a public area where people, they did everything in Folkets hus. And I was at a meeting a couple of weeks ago in Nyköping in one of those Folkets hus. It's really interesting. What is Folkets hus today and tomorrow? Because where do people meet and where do we create the public party? Or dance, or
you were, about 3 hours time.
Okay, but so what is your response to that? Because that sets you up well.
No, I love that, and but I want to answer your question, which you didn't ask me.
Oh, okay.
Well, but you asked everyone else, which is where did we go wrong?
Yeah.
Because I think what's really interesting is that sort of it's not actually, and Paul hasn't answered that one either.
We'll come back.
He looks like he wants to do. But where did we go wrong? The really interesting thing is, I think we're talking about solving the life paradox. Sorry to bring it back to that word again, but this question of how do we feed ourselves, how do we build shelter, how do we live together, how do we, the utopian questions, how do we create a good society?
Yeah.
And actually, the railways, when they came along, and this is where it radically changes, were an incredible invention. Suddenly, it was possible to travel, vast distances very, very quickly. And weirdly, just the other day, I came across a brilliant image of the first railway ever built, which was the Liverpool to Manchester Railway, which was built in 1831. It was actually to move coal backwards and forwards between, a port and a source of coal.
You don't need to tell us, Carolyn. We all know.
Sorry. But the brilliant thing is this image actually shows 4 trains going backwards and forwards. It's got posh people in the first class, ordinary people in open carriages, lumps of wood and coal, and the bottom carriage is full of farm animals, which is just beautiful because it tells you everything you need to know. So basically at that point we decoupled the question of living together from the question of how to feed ourselves. And it was a brilliant move at the time. It apparently solved the problem of food. But what happened as a result of it is exactly what Mathias is talking about. The drive to efficiency in food production actually removed the human from the food chain. And when you remove the human, you remove value, or vice versa, because people are the most expensive thing in anything we do. And so, if you like, true value and food production became decoupled. I'm just warming up, but anyway.
I just need to clarify. Because you're already on a high plane. But just to clarify, are you essentially saying that when we moved down the road of industrialization, and there was a reason for that, which was efficiency and feeding more people and so forth, is it the case that we created a kind of ratchet effect that may have made us make food in more quantities and cheaper, but actually took human beings out of the supply chain, which then had other consequences? Is that your...
Yes, and I mean also the point that I think Jan and Ulla both made, which is that, historically the food supply was acknowledged as the most important thing in any community and was therefore very highly regulated and was determined by politicians. Now, if you look at, the history of France and you realise that, Louis XVI had his head chopped off basically because an Icelandic volcano erupted and there were very bad... Sorry.
We know this as well.
And there were very, very bad harvests in France in the 1780s, and in fact the king was held to be responsible for feeding the Parisian people. So when the grain harvest failed, he was directly blamed. Paris couldn't import grain because it didn't have access to international supplies, and therefore...
You can breathe at any point now.
Yeah. So his head was chopped off. So basically, taking responsibility for the food system is a very dangerous thing to do. Politicians hate it, which is why when industrial production came along, the first thing they were very happy to do was to leave the food problem to the food companies. Yeah. And that was when it really became decoupled. And then it's been, what Tim Lang in the UK, the inventor of the term food miles, loves to call leave it to Tesco, as the sort of UK government at least,
Clarify the food miles concept, because not everyone is familiar with that.
Food miles, basically, it's a very loose concept. It's just a way of visualising the fact that the food doesn't necessarily come from, next door. And of course, as we know, you can't feed a big city from its immediate hinterland anyway, which is why Rome had an empire.
Let me just clarify before we jump on. You're going to keep firing off, I'm sure, because we've just started on where I know you're very expert. But before I bring in Paul to answer that question, these conversations inevitably are just starting points. And I think what the Future Perfect project is trying to do is, rather than put answers on the table, is to try and reinvigorate the debate with really well-framed, hopefully, and certainly very high-end content. So. You need to come into the conversation now and hopefully continue it. Some of us will continue over the dinner, but this is the kickoff, and hopefully we can keep driving it up from here. So in a few minutes, I'll invite the respondents panel. I'll present Daniela and invite the respondents panel to join in. But also now, please jump into the debate, because it's all for one and one for all. I know you've got more, so we'll come straight back. But Paul, where did it go wrong? And you can be the pivot point right back, speaking in this place where we're having this conversation, and you're about to expand the restaurant and develop the restaurant in the house. Where did it go wrong, and what do you want Fotografiska and the new restaurant to contribute to solving whatever went wrong?
I think we need to get people to connect around food in a way, to develop places where you can meet around food and to discuss food. I just heard a story about a working spot in Italy. There was a major argument going on about between two gentlemen working in a big building site, and in the end of the day there was a Swedish woman sitting next to them, but she didn't understand anything, and she asked someone sitting next to her, and they told her that they were arguing about if you should use pecorino or parmesan in a pesto. And that's the difference when you have a great food culture, because people are always discussing food in a way, and then it starts to get a value, as you were talking about, because food doesn't have the value as we want it to be, in a way. We're talking about organic food, but the statistics says that we don't buy any organic food, or we talk about local food, but we don't buy any local food. And so we need to get sort of people's attention in a way, and to be able to do that you need a meeting spot, and that could be the way where you live. Also to connect around food, to be able to grow food together, if there is spaces to grow food together. Or like in Gothenburg, I was told the other day that they are opening up a small forest inside Gothenburg to be able to just be creative of what can we do together in this part of Gothenburg, to be able to maybe produce food or just connect around food in a way. And that's the main thing with the new part of Fotografiska as well. We want people to connect around food here and culture as well, because we also have photographies.
Let's get one more round of inputs from you guys, and then we'll bring in the respondents and invite the audience to jump in. Let's jump on the localism question specifically. Perhaps starting with you, Paul. Realistic, not realistic, local food, because it sounds good, and we can talk about food and places, but how realistic is it to really bring together food production, food culture, and places, or is that just an ideology or an ideal? How realistic is it to talk about localism?
I think it's quite realistic. It just has to. You have to sort of get different kinds of people together from different part of the business, and I think just in Stockholm, it's always been what do you say in English? Utopia.
Utopia.
Yeah, because we're a main city. We don't grow anything in here, but. The other day or last year, I just found out that people are finding places where it used to be a business or it used to be a train track or whatever it could be, and they start to grow things, and people are connecting around this, and all sort of experience end up in the same place, and they actually succeed with it. They use it for themselves, they don't sell it, but the main thing is actually, I think, to be able to provide yourself with some part of it, and the rest of it can come from outdoors.
Carolyn, we'll come to you just next. Do it, go for it. Your magic word, because it fits in right here. Tell people what it is.
I mean, I think what Paul just raised is, and actually Mathias did earlier as well. In fact, everybody has, is the visibility thing, and I think that is absolutely the most important one. And for me, that's where architecture and food can really come together in a positive way, providing space for food to be visible. I mean, in terms of the local thing, I don't know whether the word glocal has sort of, as it were, made itself manifest.
Local as a combination of global and local,
Sweden,
you mean?
Yeah, but it's exactly a manifestation of those. I mean, I'd just like to say that, for me, I mean, what Nordic food represents and why I'm interested in it. In fact, interestingly, I was chairing a debate in Rio last year on Nordic food, bizarrely, to me at least. And but what was interesting is that, we were having conversation between Brazilians and Swedes about what Nordic food means. And of course, there is a very equivalent thing in Brazil, which is just simply, sort of working with the food that you have and knowing what's good and actually rediscovering. I mean, they're rediscovering ways of using plantain, which is a material that, they've almost stopped using, but it grows everywhere, sort of thing. So I think for me, the concept would be global terroir, which means absolutely...
Yeah, not everyone will know that
word. So global terroir. So, this French concept of terroir, which is that, every field... I mean, it originally began with wine growing, but, every field has a slightly different slope, a slightly different angle of sun, and therefore the same grape on similar soil produces very, very different quality wine. We've got Danielle coming on later, so talking sort of, there's a huge expertise in this concept in the room, but, it seems to me that level of knowledge and care and sort of custodianship of the land is what we need. That is ultimately, growing food is a sort of stewardship. It's about love, as I say, and just to say there's a brilliant, for me, example of how all this could work in practice in London, which is a fantastic group. They're called sort of Growing Communities. Mm-hmm. They have two concepts that I really like. One is the patchwork farm, so that basically acknowledging that, sort of a city like, well, any big city, frankly, can't feed itself from itself, and there has to be this kind of balance of food that's grown locally. And by the way, there's a very interesting historical model, which is von Thunen's model of the productive hinterland of a city, which illustrates through sort of an economic analysis what kind of foods it makes sense to grow in a city and which ones it doesn't. So I recommend that to everybody. And secondly, and I could send stuff on, a website if I'm gabbling too much. But therefore, the patchwork farm is that you grow things like herbs in the city, but clearly you don't grow corn. And secondly, her other concept, Julie Brown, this is food zones, which is through a process of education, what she calls consumer-led trade, moving more from people demanding, horse meat. They don't demand that, of course, in England. But anyway, demanding a sort of a paradigm of food which has come out of an industrial model, but understanding the true impact of food and therefore beginning to demand food according to what they wish to happen ethically and ecologically globally. So it's a sort of a progressive moving out from, importing everything to growing more in the city. I mean...
So perhaps you can capture some of that in your own work, because the word I was pointing at, was thinking of, was not glocal or terroir. It's...
Oh, my words. I made up a word, Sitopia.
But explain that, because it's an interesting word.
The reason is that, you know, when I was researching sort of the relationship between food and cities, I kept coming across, I mean, utopian models. You know, I mean, this is a 2,000 at least year-old tradition of trying to solve these problems. And utopian models are all very interesting around food. Interestingly, a lot of them have these folkhuis, you know, places, sorry, exactly, people's houses, you know, spaces where explicitly people would go to eat communal meals. This is a very, very constant theme in utopia. So is the growing of food. I mean, in Thomas More's Utopia, for instance, basically farming is the only activity that men, women and children all engage in, etc., etc. Everybody grows food in their back garden. This struck me as really interesting, but also really tragic, because we can't live in utopia, because utopia is a sort of fantasy of a perfect society. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a word that sort of, as it were, encapsulated this kind of thinking, but was also achievable and practical, you know, in a compromised way maybe. And I just thought, well, we live in a world shaped by food, so why don't we just call the world Sitopia, which is from the Greek sitos, which means food, and topos, which means place. So it's the same derivation as utopia, which means good place or no place. That's the thing, it's a pun. Yeah. It either means good place or no place. So sitos, sorry.
Carry on.
You did ask. Might have been a mistake. But so Sitopia is basically food, place, and we all live in it. This is Sitopia. It's just, you know, a very nice one, because I'm sitting between two fantastic chefs. But, you know, in the big bad world out there, it's horse meat-topia, as we know. So, but just by thinking through food and valuing food and seeing food and making it visible, all these things you can make incrementally and individually and as societies and as governments a better Sitopia. So it's ongoing.
So if I could try to encapsulate that in one way, you're saying utopias are these universal ideas that keep coming back in social conversations, but actually, even though they include things as practical as food, are unrealizable. And your point is, let's create a great society directly through food. And let's see how far we can go with that.
Yeah, and an ideal Sitopia is utopia.
Okay, Jan, localism, real or not?
I think I have to comment on this, because of course you're right in a way, or in every way. But I mean, let's say it like this: when Mathias was in Väsby cooking, that started a chain reaction, because that's the point of bringing in people that people actually respond to. So then I got a phone call from a guy called Ali Khosravi. And Ali, he was like the Kurdish leader in the community. And he said, I want to come and cook, and I want to bring all my families to come and cook as well. So they came cooking, and of course, most of them were working either at pizza places or Thai restaurants, but now they were cooking their own food. And it was incredible, because they also brought like all their friends, and the whole community came out, and that suddenly started something. And that, in its turn, brought in some ideas of how to make like a pop-up restaurant for them, or a pop-up farming thing. And I think what the whole thing is about really is two things. It's initiative, to bring in the initiative not only to the great chefs, but also to the people. The other thing is which I think is equally important, and which is always sort of forgotten in discussions, is about how to create a business model for that. Because the big companies that have the industrial companies, they have their business model, and that's not developing what we're talking about. So we need to develop those new models, which are much smaller, which are going to be based on like how do we get Ali to actually produce money? And that could really easily be done.
So let me frame the question this way. But I know you want to say something anyway, but let me ask you this one. So are you making money out of localism, and can other people do the same or not? And then say what you also wanted to say.
Doing some money out of it, I wouldn't sit there if not. But but we don't make a lot of money in the fine dining restaurants. It's actually a huge problem, because we're just buying often the most expensive ingredients, and the margin is very small. But that also, we have to be very creative, and I think that is, we have we have many things to learn others, because we are actually, I think, one of the few how to know to use everything from the produce, and that is very rare today. But that is, if you go back in the days and you look, people, they had to take care of everything, and you didn't throw food. Throwing food is a huge problem today. But what I wanted to say was that actually, what is local food? Is local food only? Is it only about produce, or is it also about new influences and cultures? And I think it's very realistic if we take in, if we're open to other cultures and other influences, and we use the produce that we have here in our region or in our country, then localism is very realistic. But if it's only about the produce, and we should do everything as it's always been, then maybe it's not realistic.
Okay. We're going to bring in the response panel, because I know that you guys have got more to share, and there's some people who want to contribute. But let me just add this. Somebody wrote to me an email saying, I'm terribly sorry I can't come. I really wanted to be there. I'm actually on holiday in Thailand right now. I thought, great. But then he wrote to the bottom, but I'll be eating locally. And I was wondering, flying around the world to eat locally seems like a rather extreme way of contributing to the debate. Daniela Hildebrand has worked for many years with Mathias in his restaurants, and now runs a company called Develop, essentially food concepts, food entrepreneurship. You can present yourself, please, for a moment, and then introduce the respondents panel, and then we can kick off the broader conversation.
So I'm sitting here with people that we're going to revisit some of the questions that were up there, because I'm sitting with three men who are actually contributing a lot to what we talked about tonight, with the hands-on, being part of it, taking responsibility, maybe eating less, eating better. Anders will tell us more about that. So please introduce yourself shortly, and then we're going to revisit a few questions.
Maybe I should stand up so you can all see me. My name is Anders Larsson, and I'm the founder of a company called iWagyu, which you might have seen out where we had the drinks. My contribution to food localism is to actually produce what we think is the very best beef in Europe, locally here in Sweden, using maybe not the cattle we use, the genetics is originally from Japan, but we breed these animals raise them with Swedish methods. For example, in Japan, they give them a lot of cereals, rice-based cereals. We don't do that. We basically give them 98.5% of their feed is grass, hay, and straw, and silage, of course, in the winter. And we really think that we are contributing to locally produced food the best we can do it. And tonight you're also going to hopefully enjoy a sampling of our beef.
Thank you, Anders. So we continue with Nicholas.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me. I'm the gardener at Rosendals Trädgård, which is just across the water. You can probably see it in the daylight. So I think it's the most local thing that we have in Stockholm. We have a cafe, and we have a wood oven bakery and different sides to it, and we produce biodynamically since 30 years back. We just started different collaborations with Mathias and Gastrologik and the oncoming restaurant Oaxen and Djurgården. But I just want to continue to talk about what you just were mentioning before, where it all went wrong. And I think that something that happened was that people were pretty sick of starve. The starvation is an important part of this thing, and starvation also developed food culture, as you can see in many countries that they're very proud of the food, as Paul mentioned about the pecorino and the parmesan. They were starving, and then we had to create something that was really on the local terroir level. So I think that's kind of changed the whole system of how you produce food, because people wouldn't starve anymore, and that was like the finest goal they could ever get. But we probably forgot about being creative about the everyday local food.
So when we have you up here, we might as well ask you, because Mathias talked about how how he's learning how to use everything, and he's always has, or for a long time, used everything from the produce, which is something I know that you do too. You know, you stems, everything. But how important is that, and how can we teach more people to do that?
I think that what I really enjoy about this the city gardening impulse that's happening, and what is good about it is that everyone that does it and getting involved in life itself, and the love of plants and how nature evolves, and that's, I think, it's as a key issue to really bring forth what is actually the essence of plants and how you can develop it and how you can work with it, like how to cook. Like it's one thing to seed and then to replant it, but then like continue to see the process and then seeing how you can cook with it and how you can work with it in different ways.
Thank you, Niklas. And last but not least.
My name is Jan Wernbeck. I work with Världsnaturfonden, or WWF Sweden. I mean, we're the largest environmental NGO with around 5 million supporters in the world and 180,000 supporters in Sweden. I mean, our mission is, to put it short, to save the world. It's a small one, but I mean, we are trying our best. I mean, one of the reasons I'm here is that we have, since more than 20 years, been having a project on semi-natural pastures and the maintenance of semi-natural pastures. And the most efficient way to do that is through having beef cattle grazing them. And I mean, the project as such has been very successful when it comes to how much semi-natural pasture that we have restored. I mean, it's about 36,000 hectares here in Sweden, and put into football fields, it's 51,000 football fields that we have restored. Of course, the problem there is not yet solved, because there's so many other aspects as we have touched a little bit on, but also, I mean, on a different level maybe, on the producer side, because no one wants to pay for the food. I mean, we all say that we like the Swedish way to produce food. We have high animal standards and all this, but when we get to the store, we only look at price. Yeah.
You're bursting with more notes that you have to get out. So let's start with you.
Really quick.
Jump in.
Just to say that, I mean, the whole point about value, to start off with, is the true costs of industrial food are externalized.
Yeah.
So there was a study done recently in India which reckoned that if you internalize the true costs of an industrial beef burger raised on meat that was raised on land that was recently cleared of rainforest, and internalize the cost of carbon emissions, obesity, type 2 diabetes, it ought to cost $200. So the point is, there isn't a level playing field. Actually, you know, sort of humanly raised, you know, grass-fed beef, you know, sort of organic food is cheap. Cheaper than any other food. And this is the irony, you know, it's the sort of the value system. The second thing I wanted to say was that the hunger question is really interesting, because yes, of course, industrial food appears to have solved the hunger question, but actually it hasn't. And in fact, what you've now got is that people are hungry because they're excluded from the industrial system. And in fact, if you look at, you know, the map of food deserts in big cities like New York or, you know, London even, you know, you see that 53% of school-age children in London are living below the quote-unquote breadline, which is just unbelievable, let alone Bangladesh, India, and so on. So we've just capitalized the hunger problem. And the other thing I wanted to say, which is just a nice thing, is that there was a study done recently in the UK about how happy people were. And the most miserable lot of the lot were bankers. And that what I really love is, guess which the happiest people were? 87% of horticulturalists declared themselves to be very happy with their lives. So they came top of the table.
Jan, you were going to contribute.
Come back to this question about initiative and model. And I mean, we did, to come back to the idea of starvation, is that We did create a model here in Sweden which became world famous, but because we could solve those problems through big industrial models, and that was great at its time. And now it's all about sort of, we live in a different world. We have internet, we have things like that. We need to find ways where people actually take their own initiatives. And the thing is that we exported also a model, which is, I was just in Thailand visiting my friend Rikri Tiravanija, who's an artist who also started a project called The Land. And what they're doing it in a very, very small scale way, bringing back nature to nature, which means to develop seeds that actually develop seeds. Because the poor little farmers, they have to buy new seeds every year, because the normal seeds now today are industrialized, so they don't even act like nature anymore. And I think that's really what the world is all about now, is to create these sort of local initiatives.
I think that we're bringing more contributions from everybody. But just for now, let me try this one.
Cut in quickly with Anders, because I mean, talking about initiative, this is a man who actually took a huge initiative, and we probably want to know why you took this initiative.
Well, I'm a modest person, but I have spent quite a bit of money and a lot of my effort and time on bringing these Japanese cattle to Sweden, and actually raising this in the most humanly way possible. And they are probably the most spoiled animals in this country, getting massage regularly and getting even classical music and a lot of other goodies. And of course, I mean, the production that we are doing is not maybe for everyone, you think, but it actually is for everyone. The price of our beef is high, you would think, but everyone could afford to try it once in a while. And I think you should. Well, you will all do it tonight.
Let me try, Anders. Let me put the conversation back to you by asking Paul and Mathias, what is the relevance, importance of the work of Anders and Niklas and Jan? Does this help you do what you do? Is it interesting, but you could choose other people? Is it essential? How would you comment on what they're doing in their respective businesses and projects?
Okay, so I'll start. It has everything to do with that. It has everything to do with quality in front of quantity. And I think the main thing is to connect two people like that, two expertise sitting next to each other, one producing high quality vegetables together with one producing high quality of meat. That also gives us a perspective of probably eating differently, different proportions, but also showing the mainstream consumer that we need to put more money into food, because good food costs a lot of money. And also, because there's not enough producers anymore, because there's no money into it. So mainly, we were talking about it just before we came in here. We have gone from 32,000 milk farmers to 4. Yeah. The last 30 years, and there's no status in becoming a producer anymore, because there's no money into it. So we have to change that. That's the main thing.
Jan, just very quickly before Mathias.
No, I just want to say that I mean, I'm working every day now with a chef, Stefan Eriksson, and it's, I mean, all my life it's been about bringing different people together, and I think that's super important. I got a phone call last week from this girl called Lisa Nordén. She happens to be the silver Olympic medalionist in triathlon, and so she started to ask about food and things, because she wanted to and she has this. So now we're bringing together Stefan and Lisa to because they have completely different perspectives, and I think that's like what's needed. No.
I appreciate very much both the work that Anders and Niklas is doing. It's very important to me. I think one of the biggest problems is that there is no money in the good food. And what's interesting with the Anders project is that he both had a very good idea, and he's the investor in it. And he solved the problem because he wanted to make a really good food, a really good meat. I think there is so many good ideas out in the air, but there is too little. It's very difficult to find investors to interesting projects, because it's a huge risk that you don't get the investment back. And it's very. I think it's now we have seen it's happened a lot of good things in food in Sweden. I would say just in the last 10 years, there is many interesting projects is run, and there is a lot of initiatives taken to do good things. But actually, one of the biggest problems is there is a lack of money to run them.
Yeah, yeah.
You're making high quality and you are making it known, but I mean we are trying to give this to the people, so to say, by trying to work with ICA to spread this pasture beef that comes from the pasture that is grazed. I mean, has also high quality. Of course, maybe not. Even compared, I'd say to what you produce. So I mean, I think that the public are ready for this as well,
Okay.
and I hope that.
So the question then to you is, and this is going to really open the debate, and this is what I was waiting for, because this is a love fest. Everyone agrees with each other right now. Is it possible to keep going down this track and replicate these functional business relationships at a very high level, or do we need to do something different? In other words, be bold, Jan. Say if this is sustainable or not sustainable in the track to achieve sustainability, if you see my point.
I mean, it all depends. I mean, we have a target in Sweden to have 500,000 hectares of semi-natural pasture that is managed well.
Yeah.
And if we're supposed to do this, I mean, who's going to pay? The most efficient way is that we pay for the food that is produced.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that is kind of, I mean, to get this more widespread, that is the best option, I'd say.
Before we truly open the floor to the audience, let me just introduce you to what the backdrop is here, because it might seem slightly odd with such brilliant projection screens, thanks to Fotografiska, that we have a blank screen. In actual fact, this is the menu at Gastrologic. I was there a few days ago with Trina Hahnemann, who's a pioneering chef in Denmark. And when you open the menu, what you discover is, in actual fact, is rather like a window onto the world of the producers. Essentially, it says, go with what the producers offer, or we'll make a selection of that, and then nothing else. And I think that I thought it was very elegant and a very powerful and simple framing of this part of the conversation, which is, if you want to talk about good food, often enough, you'll end up talking about what's realistic through the world of production and how the restaurateurs and the chefs can put that on the plate. Have we got a microphone?
I'm actually here with
Okay.
Jacob and Anton.
So, shoot.
Why a blank menu? Is it just what John described, or has it some much simpler meaning to it?
Can you hear me? All right. So it's quite simple actually, because it's all about season. If you write the menu, you have as many seasons in your kitchen as you have ingredients on your menu. And once you put the ingredients on your menu, you make a promise to the guest that is what you're having, no matter what season there is. Because all of your ingredients has different seasons, right? Some last for 1 day, some last for 2 months, some you can even store. So we wanted to create a restaurant where we didn't make any promises. So this is a menu without promises, and we do whatever we want, but we listen to the suppliers. We never order, for example, I never call the fishmonger and ask for cod or ask for turbot. I ask him what he has, and he tells me what he has. And I don't make any difference if it's mackerel or if it's turbot. It's the same for me. So that's how it works.
Did you give everyone your name? Because I'm not sure we knew your name.
My name is Jacob.
Jacob. The question is then, how is it that you managed to have one of the most prestigious restaurants in the city, and you're telling people what they can't have? Can you explain that in commercial language? How does that work?
Actually, we don't tell them what they can't have. We don't tell them nothing.
And so, just to pull out a key point there, are you saying that when you get to the level of really understanding what quality is in food, you don't need to pretend that there's 101 options, because in actual fact it's pretty obvious what the best thing is? Is that something like that going on?
Yeah, it's almost impossible for me to know all of the producers in Sweden, or all of them. Yeah, I mean, so we work with a few, and we have a dialogue with them, and that's how it works.
Before I bring it back to the panel, can I just ask, who's your horse meat supplier? Just kidding. No, there's no horse meat over there.
No, I think Jakob is having a very interesting point here, and it's also a little bit how we have been working with the suppliers. We changed our mindset some 6 years ago, and started to work a little bit in the same way. And it's if you go to the market, it would be we wouldn't know. Actually, we should be totally open to what's on the market today, and then we should try to buy what looks best, and then we should go home and we should cook it. That's how a market normally should work. But the problem is we don't know how to cook it. So it's much easier if we can buy a salmon, because we learn how to cook a salmon, and then we always go and buy a salmon. Yeah. That is a problem, because there's a lack of knowledge actually about food, and I think the education of how to use different ingredients must start. It's very important.
And then we have another question.
I've got a kind of vapor trail of thoughts going, and I'm going to backtrack through them because otherwise. So just to respond to the latest thing first, what Jakob is talking about is trust. In other words, people have far too much choice at the moment, and this ludicrous idea of visibility, which just doesn't exist. The idea that you can look at a food label and understand what's on it, or that even what's on it is what's really on it, which, of course, I come from the land of horse meat gate, or horse gate, as we're calling it. And so people are sick of this. They're desperate for somebody who really they know is going to do the right thing and to invest their trust in it.
So in the evolution of the consumer world, which we're all part of, are you saying there's a transition? We're at a transition point between choice being the big thing to trust being the big
choice
thing.
is a curse.
Choice is a curse, and trust is what we actually want, right? Okay.
Yeah. Thing one, that I'm just going to backtrack, and it won't take long. Thing two, fascinating fact. Horsegate's been going on in the UK. Have you all heard about this?
Horsegate.
Horse meat gate.
Scandal of
the
horse
meat scandal.
Okay,
have you all heard
scandal,
of it? Horse meat and everything. In value burgers and ready meals, which of course the British love to eat. There was a survey done yesterday by a big newspaper. 1 in 3 people in the UK have stopped eating ready meals as a result of this in the last few days. Secondly, butchers who sell identifiable pieces of meat from traceable sources have seen their sales go up 30% in the last 2 weeks since the scandal broke. This tells you the value of visibility and trust when people start to understand that what they thought they could trust, they can't trust. So, that is a shifting happening as we speak, a shifting in the landscape. Business models at work, investment and so on. Carlo Petrini, the founder of Slow Food, has a brilliant concept. He calls it co-production. Basically, co-production is that we're not sort of passive receivers of food, but we co-produce the food, which can mean that we share the risk of food production. And of course, there's this model, community-supported agriculture is just one example, where people buy into what the farmer is going to do ahead of time. So breaking down the barriers
between distinctive production and distinctive consumption, like collaborating around.
You co-produce and you share the risk on the understanding that, and just the last thing I wanted to say is that food is a flow. So we're talking about something that flows through our bodies and our cities and our societies anyway. And the power structure at the moment is highly, highly consolidated. So all of the potential profits and so on are actually channeled into very, very few. There are diagrams of this. They're the supermarkets, they're the big producers like Archer Daniels, Mildland, and Nestle, and so on. So if you want to get value in the system, you have to circumvent this big trunk of control, which means joining up producers and consumers directly.
But because the conversation feels like it genuinely is just starting, and we've already been talking for an hour and a half, and so this is proof positive that the Future Perfect conversation framework is just the starting point. We will continue at supper in a little while, and I'm going to start rounding it up with more voices from you guys to help me finish it off. I want 2 short inputs from you guys at the end there before we have another question from the floor, and then we'll keep going.
I want to hook on to what Paul says about discussing food. And I think we need to create spaces where we can discuss food. And somebody said it's all about getting involved in life itself. And then it comes down to values. So what we need to do is to find the common ground, what is important. And trying to make the city active in a way. And then by doing that, that's not so easy economically in different ways. So what we need to find is multiple use, functions that has got multiple use. And I really agree that it's very important to focus on business models in order to make that come true.
Business models including the role of architecture and urbanism in providing platforms for restaurateurs, and is that what you mean? Interesting. Sorry, Jon, you had a very short one, and then, yeah.
Just one thing, because I think you came into something very interesting with this idea of choice. And I think that's a plague. It really is. And because choice is producing style, it's producing fashion. And I mean, the fun thing with what we're doing at Atelier Food is just to bring in food and see what happens if there's somebody else with some kind of knowledge on something else. It could be an architect, it could be an athlete, it could be whatever. And then you bring the chef, the athlete, the artist, the scientist together, and something new occurs. Because I know that it would be super interesting to see what would happen if Paul and Mathias were cooking the same dish. Incredibly interesting, but even more interesting if they were cooking the same dish together with somebody else.
Okay.
Because that would bring in something about the world.
So what we're going to do is to bring in some voices from the floor right now. You guys simmer and bring to the boil your summation of where you want the debate and the conversation to go when we take it to the dinner. Then we'll bring in the responders again. But you see what people have to say.
You're number 2, you're number 1.
Hi, I'm Louise. First of all, thank you so much for this event. It's really interesting. What I want to say is sort of, I don't want to sound so negative, but locally produced food sounds to me pretty naive. But I don't want to use the word naive, so I want to say this is sort of a romantic idea.
Try and say naive whilst being positive. It'll be tough.
I worked several years in Holland, where, for some of you who doesn't know, is a country that is supposed to produce the most pig meat in Europe. For that, you need to have 1.2 pigs per inhabitants of Holland, which is 17 million people, on a very small, on a very little area. So what the government did was asking some architects if they could come up with an idea about how to actually give place to these pigs who supposed to, their meat we supposed to consume. And a Dutch architect office called NVRDV decided the pig city, which is actually an area full of skyscrapers. And on every level it lives between 100 to 120 pigs. And I mean, for me, it is very interesting to look at this because actually...
Do you think that's realistic?
It might not be realistic, but it is, I believe it is the place we are going to.
Okay.
And I was wondering, you can have a discussion about this, but do you, the one who's sitting on the panel, really believe in this? Like, really truly believe this is going to happen?
You mean like the localism will become the way to provide food?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so hold on to the questions. I'll feed them back to you, as it were. But we need to get some more from the audience because we've got a lot to get through. Yeah.
My name is Josephine. I run a startup catering service where we use the culinary skills of low-income and immigrant women in Stockholm suburbs. So basically, we sell food based on their culinary skills. I just wanted to add to some of the previous comments about the price we pay for food. And I think it should be split up into two, or the conversation needs to be very diversified because one problem is the people that have the financial capacity to pay for the food. We use organic produce in our menus. For me, that's just a matter of quality. But the women that we work with, they struggle to pay their rents and to pay basic needs. So
and they don't eat organic food? They don't eat organic food? Or
No,
no, they don't eat it, okay.
I'm
So-
sorry.
so they
they're
cook
not
with it,
able
but they
to
don't eat it.
consume organic food in their everyday
Okay, so
shopping.
it's too expensive. Yeah.
So I just want to, I think my approach to this as of now is to look at it in a long term, with a long term perspective. Some change will take a lot of time.
If I was to put you on the spot, would you agree with Louise that this is unrealistic, this world of lovely local food, or how
I don't think
hard?
my comment wasn't so much on the
So
local
it's saying
aspect.
there's two tracks. The one is for how would you describe your point about needing to be relevant for people that have lower incomes? How would you connect that to this conversation or the localism conversation?
Well, their skills are both global and local, but
Okay.
I don't think I can add to that comment.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
So one more.
Yep. And then one more. There's a gentleman hiding behind the pillar.
Right.
Hi, my name is Asha, and I was thinking about what you were talking about with consumerism, and also like when you see that documentaries are coming out, for example, the one about Dole, and now the awareness about the ready-cooked lasagna, and what happens when people are aware of what is going on with their food, how that then affects these big companies, how they have to pull back and actually change. And so I was wondering in this discussion, it's how can you put in the consumer's level of power, which is really ultimate. We are the ones that are feeding into these companies. They need us more than we need them in that sense. So being aware of it will like what's going on will change the dynamic. So how do we increase the consumer power?
To Carolyn's point of how this scandal increased the butchers
Consumer-
by
yes,
30%,
consumer
so
awareness.
it really shows how powerful
How do we
it is.
put it on a broad level, and like what do we do? Obviously, everyone wants it to be better if they know what it is they're buying.
There's a gentleman here, locked and loaded. He's got something to say.
Well, my question was, in order to start like a folk movement that's working, don't you think it's a good idea to have a bigger, like greenhouses or something, so that the production is at least almost industrial?
Okay. Do we need is the question? Do we need larger scale production? Is that?
I think actually that's a good question for the respondent panel.
Sure.
Nicholas.
Yes, I would like to follow that lead and Louise' lead and speak about how do we effectivize the organic.
Because just to clarify for not everyone who knows, your world of work is comparatively small greenhouses that don't have multi-story pig farms or massive industrial greenhouse production. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So your response is?
And I'm saying that this entire discussion and this invitation was about the city, and we just want to pinpoint that it started outside the city from the start, and really to be sure that that's the place where it's going to happen to the quality produce. I'm not sure, and I'm not naive in the sense that I'm not going to be producing enough food for the entire area of Stockholm. I'm just going to be able to show how you can do it and how you can do it quality-wise and how you can work with the soil that is sustainable and then enhances the quality of the soil that develops the human beings. So that's, I think, that just an important part of this discussion, that the rural areas are really an important bit of it.
I wanted to add one thing about consumer trust, which is very important. We have seen some problems in the market recently, in which everyone has referred to the lasagna problem. We have looked at this from the very beginning. So the traceability of our beef that we produce is extremely important. Every piece of meat that we deliver to our customers, which we deliver ourselves from a local slaughterhouse, every piece of meat is marked with the ID of the animal, the age of it, what sex it has, even the name of it, and we can give a story about each animal, how it's been living and treated and so forth. And so I think that has, I hope, fully created a trust in what we deliver to our customers, and I think that is very important. And that's something I think other producers should also try to copy what we are doing, actually, because that's the best way of keeping people informed what they eat.
So what we're going to do now is I'll ask the panel to jump on some of the points that most move them from those questions and comments, and then I will ask you to not so much round up, but put some brackets around some issues, because half of the room is going to continue the conversation upstairs, and another, hopefully, part of the conversation will continue in a couple of days. But come up, because I know you've got some responses, and then I'll ask you to round up and get the respondents in again. What are you jumping on?
I work in Holland a lot. I'm going to the first question. Actually, can I respond to all of the questions? I'll try and be really, really quick. Sorry. It's absolutely fascinating. I work in the University of Wageningen, which is a huge university in the south of the Netherlands, who is responsible for creating some of the most terrifying projects on the future of food production I've ever seen and you will ever see. And
what do you mean by terrifying? Like
okay, so the big issue here is, I mean, the MVRDV Pig City project that the first questioner raised is a kind of provocation. It's basically saying, look, if we carry on eating this much pigs, you know, actually let's stick them in tower blocks and actually face up to the scale of what's going on. I mean, scale is a huge issue that we haven't really touched on nearly enough today. Of course, the immediate question that raises is, and the whole point of that project was really to say, should we really be eating this many pigs? And of course, the whole issue of grass-fed meat that Anders is talking about is actually sort of saying that, you know, our relationship with cows, has evolved for a reason. It's because cows can eat grass and we can't. So that's how it works. It's a kind of synergetic relationship. The question of cost of food on lower incomes and so on. I mean, the truth is that actually people on lower incomes are usually the ones that live in food deserts and therefore can't get their hands on real food. It's about education. It's about knowledge, the ability to... You can eat very well on very little money if you know how. That's a much bigger discussion. The horse meat thing, of course, is absolutely about the decoupling of government responsibility that I was talking about earlier on. What's happened in the UK over the last 15 years or something is that the government has systematically slashed by 80% the amount of money spent on inspections of food, and it's also split responsibility for inspecting food into two different departments. So that just gives you some idea of where that problem's come from.
You have another chance to comment in a second. Let me just ask the other, Jan, were there any points coming out of the comments and questions that were particularly interesting for you? What do you pick out of that?
No. Absolutely. No, but I mean, one thing I think we're bringing up now is, of course, the idea of education. I mean, we're getting... I had a conversation today with a guy I helped forming an academy out in Rinkeby, Stavros Luka, who made the poorest kids in Sweden to the best in Sweden 8 years in a row in mathematics. I think he's like hero. And I'm trying to bring him together with Gaston Acurio when he's coming in a couple of weeks to Sweden, because I think they have this in common. Because it's not only about education in that sense. It's really about making these kids aware of something that's out there in society. And I think, I mean, what we're facing now, maybe this is too long, but anyway, we're facing a world which is becoming urbanized in a very quick way. And I mean, what we're talking about is like really important issues. And if we, I mean, what Stavros has done out in Rinkeby, I think is really amazing. You know, it makes these kids aware of the world. And I think that's really what, as far as I understand, what Gaston Acurio, maybe Mathias and Paul knows this much better, what he's done is to make the kids in Peru.
Do you see your project as an awareness project? What's the educational dimension of what you're working on right now?
Definitely awareness project. I like to answer to that consumer power, the power of the consumer, and I think our project could be a platform for the debate and discussion, which is cross generations, so we can learn each other. We can be teachers. We can get the values out there and talk about it. So it will become eventually it will become ridiculous. All these products out there, we just won't buy them.
Paul and Mathias, do you see yourself as educators as much as?
Of course, yeah. I was just saying that we've been working for a few years now to putting up food as a subject at school. It's a very important part of the day. It doesn't have everything to do with energy. It's also have to do a lot about knowledge, and to bring the new generation up with the right sort of perspective for food, and also the knowledge of food and the knowledge of seasons, the knowledge of different qualities, and it starts already when they're really small. And I have 3 of them myself, and we're working really hard on different platforms around Sweden, and I think that's one of the main thing to be able to make a change in a way.
Is education in your head when you're cooking, or is it just a result of what you do?
I think it's more a result of what I do, probably.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to eat a pig who's been living on the 8th floor in a flat, and I don't think anybody is longing for that, and that is probably not going to happen. But it's an interesting example of what could happen if we are really stupid in the future.
Okay. So we have to jump ahead right now. So what I'd like you to do is to lay out a couple of exciting things from this conversation that you want to concretely push forward, both in the conversation in the dinner, but also in your work and your practice, and some cautions or some problems you see down the road. So things that you think you really want to work on, things you think might get in the way of that, and then I'll ask the respondents to do the same. Let's run it back. You start, Mathias. Things that you find exciting in this conversation that you'd like to keep moving forward, and things that you think are problematic. Maybe pigs in space, for example, might be a problem.
No, but there is many things that is interesting in this discussion. I think maybe that the most important thing is that there is so many good ideas, but we need to do some action about things. And of course, there is probably some economic problems sometimes, but they can be solved. I think we have maybe to think in different models, and I think this changed the risks of economy a little bit. Maybe we all could invest a small amount of money, and we could change things in a much quicker way than if we wait for the big. Maybe we just one investor to solve the problem for us. I think that it's also very important not only to discuss food. I think maybe the most important thing is that Paul was talking about is to educate and to show kids food, and maybe the best way to discover food is to eat good food, and show people good example of what good food can be. Good food talks to you in a way that can be incredible.
So the talking will soon finish, and we'll start eating. Carolyn, positives and cautions in the conversation that you want to continue this evening and then beyond.
I mean, I've really enjoyed being here and having the conversation, so thank you very much. I mean, for me, the exciting thing about food, I've really been sort of living in this world now for, I guess, 13 years, is that you meet incredible people who are already doing amazing things. And I think for me, it's just actually the power through food to ask very, very fundamental questions about, what a good life is. Because I think the whole conversation is not about food, it's through food. The real conversation is what is a good life. And of course you can ask that question through food, that's fantastic. I think the scale issue that came up right at the end is very important. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting to me that in a way our ideal of a sort of a wonderful farm is the kind of what we call the old farmer McDonald model, which is, one cow, one horse, a few chickens, blah, blah, blah. The interesting thing is the scary model I was about to tell you about, and then I got distracted by all sorts of other things, is basically doing that at the scale that can feed Shanghai. And it's a project called Greenport Shanghai. And if you want to be scared about the food future, go on the internet and look up a video called Greenport Shanghai. It's designed by basically a branch of the Dutch Agriculture Ministry.
So
scale changes what is good and what is not good.
Okay.
Because it's a multi-use, but it's all about efficiency, it's not about people. So for me, the good life is a question that actually sees the whole problem from the point of view of, what is the human involvement, I guess.
Paul.
There's so many interesting things been said tonight, and we've been talking a lot about food and about the cities and how we live and how we can develop cities, but I would like to talk about how we live sustainable in a way, like to see it as a challenge in everyday, the small things in everyday living, more sustainable, to do small stuff and to make a difference together in a large scale.
I think it's quite simple, actually. We used to have the best model in the world in Sweden to build sort of the society, but unfortunately there hasn't been any product development in the last 30, 40 years. So in terms of that, we're McDonald's in Sweden. And I think we need a huge amount of venture capital to develop prototypes of how you can integrate food, how you can integrate ideas of sustainability into actual new models. And that's easily done.
Mathias said that it's a bit difficult to plan for this to happen. It's better just to do it. So somehow I have to plan for the unplanned. And it's a bit difficult, but I think we need to be very specific. So please approach us and be specific.
Be involved. So to close the debate part of the conversation, perhaps the respondents can answer the same questions, which is positive points to take forward and then cautions. And then I will round up and we'll carry on upstairs if that's for some of us that are doing that. Anders.
My take on sustainability is when it comes to consuming food is maybe to be more moderate in consuming beef, which has been kind of a big discussion in the recent time in Sweden, that we consume too much beef. But also to consume the best quality when you consume. And the genetics of, if you talk about meat, of cattle is extremely important. You have to start with the right genetics to be able, and it happens so that our animals have the absolute best genetics to produce a healthy food. High in the good cholesterol, low in the bad cholesterol, extremely high levels of omega-3 and omega-6.
Let me just observe that an investor and industrialist in the meat industry just said, don't buy too much of my stuff, which is itself a kind of breakthrough in the conversation.
Do buy it, but not too much, because we don't have so much.
Niklas.
I'm thinking that my take on this sustainability is that you can talk about sustainability as much as you like, but if there's no one to act on it, it's not going to happen. So I think that to work with sustainable business models and to work with the rural areas that produces good quality food and make it sustainable, make it fun, make it interesting, and make it developing, and I think that's going to be the take on the future. If there's no politicians or investors that's going to be working on that, we're not going to have anything left.
John.
Yeah. So I'll just more or less continue on that point, because I think growing food in the city is a good way of showing people that, what you buy in the store is not actually grown in the kind of cans or bins, so it's grown in another way, and I think that is important. And I thought what was really mind-opening for me was that you said that we have taken away the agra. We don't come with the stuff into the agras and we buy there. I guess you all thought I would talk about sustainability, but I want to raise this question. And then also we are at this point in society where people don't want to meet in the town halls or in organizations and things like this. And it's striking me that, I mean, if we should have a 15-year-old here, because where do they meet? Where do they talk about food? Is it on Facebook, on Skype, on Instagram, or Twitter, or something? I mean, we're all, I guess, about 15 years, every one of us here. So that is a question I would say that would be interesting to discuss further. I mean, where do young people meet and talk about food?
We've come to the end of this part of this evening's conversation. I think that you will agree with me that this is a spectacularly multi-dimensional conversation, so it's perhaps not surprising that we've blasted our way through nearly more than an hour and a half's worth of conversation and have vaguely scratched the surface. But what I'd like you to do is to start by thanking the speakers and the respondents for their input this evening, and then I'll carry on and we can continue to round up.